I walked into my husband's office and froze when I saw my sister sitting on his lap. What happened next will shock you. My name is Rachel Donovan, and the day my world collapsed started with a mahogany door that wasn't quite shut. 3 inches, that's all it was. Just 3 inches of space between the life I thought I had and the one I actually did. I was stopping by my husband's office to surprise him. I had brought his favorite chai latte and a file he said he forgot. It was supposed to be a kind gesture, a reminder that even if we were busy, even if life was noisy, I still cared. But when I stepped into the hallway of that sleek Manhattan law firm, something shifted. It wasn't just the silence or the way the afternoon sun glinted off the gold lettering on the glass door. It was the sound. Laughter, his voice, low and intimate, a tone I hadn't heard directed at me in months. I pushed the door open just enough to see her. My younger sister, Danielle. She was perched on Cole's lap. Yes, my husband's lap, her silk blouse half unbuttoned, her lips locked with his like they were starving. And they didn't hear me. Not at first. Not when I gasped. Not when my entire world split clean down the middle. It wasn't until Danielle opened her eyes and glanced over Cole's shoulder that she saw me. She didn't scream. She didn't jump. She just smiled. Like I was a minor inconvenience. Like I was the one interrupting something sacred. That moment didn't just shatter my heart. It rewrote who I thought I was. I was the wife who made his protein shakes, who backed his career through 3 years of brutal associate life. I was the sister who helped Danielle through 2 breakups, her bar exam, and even loaned her money to get through her unpaid internship. And in a blink, I realized something: I was the only one playing fair in a game everyone else had rigged. Danielle stood up slowly, not even bothering to fix her hair. "Oh, hey, Rach. You're early," she said casually, brushing non-existent dust from her skirt. Early, as if I'd walked in on a dentist appointment. Cole stood too, adjusted his tie, looked at me like I was a file he misplaced. "Rachel, we need to talk." I laughed, a dry, brittle sound that surprised even me. "You think I want to talk?" He stepped closer. "We didn't mean for you to find out this way." And that's when I realized something chilling they had planned to tell me. Just not yet. They wanted a clean handoff, a polite betrayal, to replace me without a mess. I set the coffee down on his desk. It spilled a little on the edge. I didn't wipe it. "I want you out of the apartment tonight," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Cole chuckled. "It's my apartment, Rachel. You know that. It's in my name." Danielle sat down on his couch like we were discussing a business deal. "Maybe you should go stay with Mom," she added sweetly. "She's been saying she's lonely." I looked at her, my sister, my blood, and for the first time I didn't recognize her at all. If you've ever walked into a room and realized your entire life was a lie, that every gesture of love had a price tag you didn't see before, leave a like and stay with me. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a story about consequences. And I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't collapse into a sobbing heap the way you'd expect a woman to when she catches her husband with her sister. No, I walked out. I made it all the way to the street before the tremble started in my hands. I didn't even know where I was walking, just that I had to move. The sharp spring air bit into my skin, but I couldn't feel it. The people bustling past me were a blur, strangers in a world I no longer recognized. I ended up in Central Park, sitting on a bench under the same tree where Cole had proposed. The irony burned. I looked down at my phone. 6 missed calls, 2 from him, 4 from Danielle, and a text from my mother. "Call me. Danielle told me everything. We need to talk." I didn't call her. I stared out across the lawn and asked myself the question I hadn't dared to yet. What if they'd been planning this all along? Cole and I had been married for 3 years. He was the ambitious junior partner. I was the freelance designer who worked from home and made sure dinner was on the table. Our marriage had its flaws, sure, but betrayal with my own sister. That wasn't a crack, it was demolition. And now they wanted me to go live with my mother, as if I were some child being shuffled back to the starting line. The weight of humiliation settled like wet cement on my chest. Not just because of the affair, but because they had already decided what my next chapter should look like without even asking me. I pulled out my phone again. This time I opened Danielle's social media. She'd posted a selfie at a charity gala last week, the one Cole was supposedly too tired to attend. But there he was, in the background, hand on her lower back, smiling. Had everyone known except me? I checked another post 2 months earlier, A black and white shot of her coffee and some quiet company. I zoomed in. The sleeve, the watch. It was Cole's. Each scroll felt like peeling back a layer of my life, and underneath all I found was rot. When the sun started to set, I finally stood up. My legs were stiff, my face numb. But inside something had turned. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to scream. And I sure as hell wasn't going to vanish. When I got home, Cole was already there, packing a small overnight bag in the living room like he was heading on a business trip. Danielle wasn't far behind, sitting at the counter sipping wine. "Rachel," he said, "we should discuss the logistics." Danielle added, "We don't want this to be harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be." They said it like I was the obstacle, like I was the last loose thread keeping them from tying their pretty little future together. "Are you serious?" I asked. "You cheat on me, lie to me, humiliate me, and now you're acting like I'm the problem." Cole stepped forward, palms raised like some sort of hostage negotiator. "Let's be adults. Let's handle this respectfully." "Respect." I nodded slowly. "You want respectful, fine. Let's be fair. You're moving out tonight, and I'm contacting a lawyer tomorrow." Danielle scoffed. "A lawyer?" "For what you signed a prenup, Rachel. Everything's in his name." She was right. I had. Cole had convinced me it was just smart business protection against debts or liabilities. I was in love. I trusted him. But now I was awake. And hell hath no fury like a woman who finally understands she's been played. When I went to bed that night alone in the home I helped build, I wasn't thinking about heartbreak. I was thinking about strategy. I didn't know yet what my next move was, but I knew one thing for sure. They had declared war, and I was done playing nice. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache, not from alcohol, but from the weight of realization pressing down on me all night. My entire marriage had been an illusion. Worse, it had been a stage carefully set up so I could play the fool while they rehearsed their new life behind the curtain. The silence in our apartment was oppressive. No footsteps, no coffee brewing, no Danielle's fake laugh echoing down the hallway. Just me and the ghosts of every sacrifice I'd made for a man who'd already replaced me. I walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and stared at the white ceramic mug with the words, "Best wife ever," printed in blue. I almost laughed. Instead, I set it down, pulled out my laptop, and opened a blank spreadsheet. If they wanted to treat this like a business deal, fine. I'd treat it like a war. The first thing I did was pull up every financial record I could access. Every shared account, every transaction. Cole had always managed the big money decisions while I paid the utilities and groceries. It had seemed fair, but now I realized that was by design. He'd built a wall between me and every asset that mattered. My stomach sank. Everything, major mortgage investments, even the car, was in his name. I had nothing but the balance in my personal checking account and a handful of freelance payments pending. I opened another tab and searched best divorce lawyers in New York City. It felt dramatic, premature, but something inside me, something sharp and quiet, refused to be caught off guard again. That afternoon, I finally returned my mother's call. Her voice was clipped already in defensive mode. "Danielle told me what happened. I think it's best if you come stay with me for a while, just until this all settles." "Settles." "You knew," I said. She paused. "I didn't know the details. But you knew something." "Rachel, honey, Danielle's always had a hard time finding someone who really understands her. And you and Cole, it wasn't working." I almost dropped the phone. "You're siding with them?" I asked. "I'm not siding with anyone. I'm being practical. Cole and Danielle have chemistry. You've always been more domestic." I felt my jaw tighten. "I'm a business owner. I run branding campaigns for national clients." "I know, sweetie, but designing wedding invitations from your laptop isn't exactly—" "I don't design wedding invitations," I snapped. "And even if I did, that doesn't make me disposable." There was a beat of silence. "You're emotional, understandably. But try not to make this uglier than it needs to be. Danielle's still your sister." My hand gripped the phone like a vice. "No," I said slowly. "Danielle was my sister. She made her choice." When I hung up, I realized something terrifying. I was alone. Truly, absolutely alone. The people who were supposed to protect me, my husband, my sister, my mother, had already rewritten the story of my life without me in it. I was supposed to quietly step aside, to retreat, to go back to my childhood bedroom and shrink. But they'd underestimated me. That night I emailed 4 lawyers. Only one replied within the hour. Margot Livingston. Her reputation, ruthless, brilliant, undefeated in high-conflict divorces. We scheduled a consultation for the next morning. Before I went to sleep, I opened Danielle's Instagram again. She'd posted a photo of Cole's dog, our dog, on the balcony. The caption read, "Fresh starts." They were already erasing me, already posing with pieces of my life like they'd bought them fair and square. But I wasn't going to vanish into the background. Not now, not ever. Margot Levingston's office sat high above Midtown on the 34th floor of a building that practically screamed power. Glass walls, stone floors, a view of Manhattan that could silence even the most self-important CEOs. I didn't know what to expect when I walked in. Maybe judgment, pity, that polite professionalism that masks condescension. But Margot didn't blink. She didn't pat my hand or call me sweetheart. She looked over her reading glasses, tapped the file I had sent, and said, "Your husband's settlement offer is offensive." I exhaled. For the first time in days, I felt seen. Margot had already read through everything: the prenup, the asset distribution, the property titles. "He structured everything in his favor," she said. "That tells me this wasn't an accident. It was premeditated. He's been preparing for this for a long time." My throat tightened. "He said it was for tax efficiency, that putting everything in his name just made it easier." She raised one eyebrow. "And you believe that?" I didn't answer. She flipped another page. "You said the affair started roughly 8 months ago." I nodded. "And you have photos, messages?" "I have screenshots, her posts, and I'm pretty sure his firm doesn't know." Margot's expression shifted slightly, calculated interest. "Good," she said, "because that's leverage. Affairs are messy. Affairs with your wife's sister. Even messier, especially when you're trying to make partner at a firm that prides itself on family values." I swallowed. "Do you want to fight Rachel?" she asked. "Or do you want to settle and disappear?" I answered without thinking. "I want them to know I won't disappear quietly." Her lips curled into the smallest smile. "Then we'll begin." That night, I sat on the couch in the apartment I was still technically living in with Cole and started digging. Not just emails or finances, but patterns. I remembered something Oliver Sorry Cole had once said to his friend over whiskey: "Everyone has a type." I pulled up his ex's name, searched her socials. She had been close with Cole's former assistant. Photos showed them on vacation, weeks before the assistant moved out of the city. The girlfriend before that, she used to work at the same startup as her roommate until that roommate started dating Cole. And Danielle? She had 3 ex-friends who all had one thing in common: men who'd ended up leaving them for her. They weren't in love, they were predators. People who got off on stealing what others had built. This wasn't an accident. It was a pattern. The next morning, Cole was already dressed for work when I came into the kitchen. He didn't look up from his coffee. "We need to set a move-out date," he said, like we were discussing a subscription cancellation. I ignored him. "I spoke with a lawyer," I said. "Her name is Margot Levingston." His mug stopped halfway to his lips. "I'm not accepting your offer. I'm contesting the prenup, and I'll be filing on grounds of adultery." He lowered the mug slowly. "You're bluffing." I walked to the fridge, opened it, and grabbed an orange. Peeled it without a word. "You realize that if you fight this, you'll get nothing," he said. "You'll spend thousands on legal fees just to lose." I smiled softly. "Maybe, or maybe I'll remind everyone at your firm what kind of man you really are." He didn't respond, but his silence said everything. It only took 2 days for Cole to start squirming. The moment Margot filed the official divorce petition, complete with a request for forensic accounting and a claim of adultery, he called me. "Rachel, this is unnecessary," he said, his voice taut. "We can handle this like adults." I stayed quiet. "Dragging this into court, it's just going to make things worse for everyone. You, me, Danielle." There it was, the royal we. Still clinging to the illusion of control, still assuming that my silence meant submission. "What's done is done, Cole," I said, "but now we do it on my terms." Click. Later that day, I received an email from Danielle. "I think we should talk sister to sister. Let's not let lawyers ruin our bond." I didn't respond. The next afternoon, she showed up, unannounced, again. I opened the door just enough to see her perfectly styled hair-nude lipstick and oversized sunglasses that didn't quite hide the panic in her eyes. "Rachel, can we talk?" I stepped aside. She walked in like she owned the place, sat on the same couch where we used to drink wine and cry over boys together. Now she curled her legs under her like it was her apartment. "I didn't mean for this to get so messy," she began, her voice syrupy. I didn't know you were going to react this way." "React this way, as if my fury was the real betrayal." "You're trying to destroy Cole's career," she continued. "Do you know how many hours he put in to get where he is? He's under a lot of pressure. And now the partners are starting to ask questions." I crossed my arms. "Maybe he should have thought about that before sleeping with his wife's sister." She bristled. "You've always had this vindictive streak," she said. "That bitterness. It's why you and Cole were never a great match. You mean I wasn't enough? I said flatly. Her eyes flicked to mine. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She took a breath, shifting tactics. Look, this doesn't have to be war. I know you're hurting, but maybe this is a chance for everyone to start over. Clean slate. You could go back home. Mom misses you. And honestly, the city's exhausting. Wouldn't it be nice to reset? Reset. As if I was a broken phone that just needed a hard reboot. No, I said calmly. What I want is for you and Cole to stop pretending I don't exist, and to realize there's a price for what you did. Danielle stood up, finally letting the sweetness fall away. Fine, but you're making this harder than it has to be. Her favorite line, their shared mantra. And if you think you're going to come out of this looking like some victim, think again. People are watching, Rachel. Our world is small. She turned to leave. I didn't stop her. Instead, I walked to the window, watching her figure disappear down the street, and I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt alive. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly who I was. And I was just getting started. If you've ever had someone tell you to not make things harder than they have to be when all they really meant was, stay quiet and let me win, then you know how much it takes to stand your ground. Leave a comment below if you've ever been told you're too emotional for simply demanding respect. You're not alone. Margot called the next morning, her voice as crisp as always. Rachel, we've had movement. I sat up straight on the couch, notebook in hand, coffee forgotten. The firm's general counsel contacted me. They've received anonymous inquiries from reporters asking about Cole's conduct. The partners aren't pleased. I didn't ask who sent those reporters. I didn't need to. Margot was strategic, but she never crossed lines. What became public knowledge that was simply the result of exposure? And your sister, she added, any contact? She came by yesterday, tried to gaslight me into backing down, told me I was making things harder than they have to be. Margot chuckled softly. Their overconfidence is a gift. She was right. While they paraded around like their happily ever after was inevitable, I was documenting everything. Every text, every veiled threat, every post and every conversation where they tried to spin a new version of the story, one where I was the bitter ex-wife and Danielle was the innocent bystander who just fell in love. But the cracks were already showing. 2 of Danielle's clients dropped her PR firm within 72 hours of the first gossip blog mentioning her entanglement. One designer even tweeted, professional boundaries matter. I don't work with people who disregard them. It was subtle, not a scandal, but enough to shake her grip. As for Cole, Margot informed me that his firm had placed him on temporary leave pending internal review. His dreams of full partnership slipping. That afternoon, I returned home to find a manila envelope shoved halfway through my mailbox. Inside was a revised settlement offer more generous than the first. It included a lump sum of $50,000, 6 months' rent covered, and a non-disclosure agreement. No, I didn't even need to ask Margot. We were past hush money. That night, I started writing. Not legal documents, not statements. I wrote my story, every twisted detail, every moment I'd made myself small to make them comfortable. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but getting it out felt like reclaiming something. I stopped seeing myself as the woman who'd been betrayed. I started seeing myself as the woman who survived it, and more than that, fought back. The next morning, I opened my inbox to find an email from an editor at a women's media platform. She'd seen whispers of the case online and wanted to talk. Not for gossip, she clarified. We're doing a series on women reclaiming their power after public betrayal. We'd love to feature your voice anonymously if you prefer. I didn't respond immediately, but a seed had been planted. Because this wasn't just my pain anymore. It was a pattern, and I wasn't the only one tired of staying silent. Cole showed up at my apartment that Friday, not with flowers or apologies or even excuses, just a tired face and a folder in his hand. I didn't invite him in. He stood in the hallway, the noise of the city just behind him, the tension between us thick enough to silence everything else. I came to make peace, he said. I almost laughed. Is that what we're calling it now? He looked down at the folder and handed it to me. I opened it slowly. Another settlement offer, this time with significantly more money, no NDA, and an added clause allowing me to keep the furniture, appliances, and the car. This is what you think peace looks like, I asked. I'm trying, Rachel. No, I said, locking eyes with him. You're not trying to make peace. You're trying to stop the bleeding. He didn't argue. Your firm is under scrutiny, I continued. Danielle's losing clients, and the narrative is slipping out of your hands. I never wanted this to turn into a circus. Then maybe you shouldn't have slept with my sister. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Not anymore. I know you're hurt. No, Cole. Hurt is stepping on someone's foot. This, what you did, was calculated. It was cruel. And it was designed to leave me with nothing. I could see it now clearly in a way I couldn't before. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He'd laid legal traps from the start, slowly restructuring everything to his name, leveraging my trust like currency. You planned for a divorce before we ever reached our first anniversary, I said. He hesitated. I protected my future. You stole mine. He exhaled, stepping back like my words had landed somewhere deep. I'll give you the house, he said suddenly, but please stop whatever you're doing online. You're hurting my reputation. No, I said, folding the offer in half. I haven't done anything yet. But if you want to avoid more exposure, settle fairly. He left without another word. I watched him disappear down the hallway, and for the first time I didn't feel smaller. I didn't feel like the one left behind. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped asking for permission. Later that night, I sat on my tiny balcony, sipping tea and reading the messages pouring into my anonymous email account, the one tied to my upcoming media interview. Messages from women I'd never met sharing stories of betrayal, silencing legal traps, and starting over. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a reckoning. And if you've ever been the one left behind, the one erased, the one they thought would go quietly, then you know how powerful it is when someone says no more. If you're still reading this, take a second to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Not just to support the story, but because maybe it's time we all start telling our own. 3 days passed before I heard anything more from Cole or Danielle. The silence wasn't comforting, it was tactical. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm when both sides are calculating their next move. I spent those days preparing mine. Margot and I met again in her office this time, in front of a whiteboard she'd filled with bullet points, asset charts, and deposition timelines. She was surgical with her words, cutting through legal jargon like it was butter. They're stalling, she said, tapping the board. They're trying to wait you out. They expect you to lose steam or settle under pressure. But if you hold your ground, they'll start making mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that turn a private betrayal into a public scandal. She wasn't exaggerating. That morning, a minor legal blog had picked up on the divorce filing. They hadn't connected all the dots yet, but they were sniffing around curious about the junior partner being sued for adultery by his wife and the name of the woman involved. It wouldn't take long before someone put it together. Margot smiled, almost amused. The more pressure they feel, the sloppier they'll get. She was right. That afternoon, I received an unmarked envelope delivered to my building's front desk. Inside were printed screenshots, text messages between Danielle and someone saved only as CH. Cole Hartford. She won't fight. Trust me. Rachel's too soft. She'll cry, maybe write a blog post or whatever, but she doesn't have the backbone to drag us through court. If she sues, I'll bury her. I know people. She'll lose everything. There was no sender, no note, just the evidence. Margot's response was immediate. Anonymous tips aren't admissible unless verified, but this gives us a roadmap. If these texts are real, we can subpoena phone records and prove coordination. They really thought I'd just take it and disappear, I said quietly. Margot nodded, because they're used to people playing by rules they don't follow. That night, I sat in bed staring at my ceiling fan. The room was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I thought about the times I'd let Danielle interrupt my plans because she needed advice, about the dinners I rescheduled when Cole worked late, about how often I'd given up pieces of myself to hold relationships together that were only ever held by me. They'd mistaken my kindness for weakness, but I was done giving without return. The next morning, I received a call, unknown number. Rachel Danielle's voice rang through the line, tight and shaky. What the hell are you doing? Good morning to you too. Cole's firm is threatening disciplinary action. His name's been flagged in 2 internal memos. Do you realize what you've started? I haven't started anything, I said calmly. I'm just responding. You need to stop. This is getting out of hand. No, Danielle. What got out of hand was you sitting on my husband's lap while lying to my face for 8 months. You're making this worse for everyone. For everyone, I repeated. Funny how no one said that when I was the only one bleeding. I hung up. They were unraveling, and I wasn't finished yet. 2 weeks after that phone call with Danielle, I walked into the mediation room like someone who had nothing left to lose but everything to reclaim. Cole sat across the polished conference table, flanked by his lawyer, and a forced smirk. Danielle didn't show. Her name was on the documents, but her absence told me she thought she could still avoid the consequences. Margot leaned in close. Today isn't about revenge. It's about leverage. Let them reveal their weakness. We opened with financial disclosures. Margot had filed an asset review that flagged several offshore accounts Cole had opened within the last year, accounts I had never been told about. He shifted uncomfortably when those were brought up. "I'd like to request a full audit," Margot stated calmly. "Given the clear pattern of concealment and asset diversion, we believe there may be community funds held in violation of California marital property law." Cole's attorney tried to object. Margot simply slid forward the printed screenshots, now verified by phone company metadata. The room went still. "That's inadmissible," his lawyer tried again. "Actually," Margot said, smiling slightly, "the sender authenticated their phone number this morning in a deposition. It's valid." Cole's face flushed, his voice cracked. "Rachel, come on, this is insane." "No, Cole. What's insane is assuming I'd go quietly while you and my own sister treated my marriage like a sandbox to play in." He was rattled, for the first time visibly cornered. That's when Margot brought out the final card, a witness list. Among the names was my old friend from Cole's firm, someone who had overheard Danielle bragging about taking Rachel's spot. She'd been more than happy to sign a statement along with a former paralegal who had witnessed late-night office visits and deleted security logs. By the end of that session, Cole's legal team asked for a break to reconsider terms. When they left, Margot leaned over. "You've cracked the wall. Now you just push." That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of mint tea in my journal. I didn't cry. Not this time. I wrote. I wrote about how pain doesn't mean defeat. I wrote about the quiet women who carry entire households on their backs only to be discarded when they say no more. And I wrote one line I underlined twice. My story isn't about what they did. It's about what I did after. I knew I wanted to share it one day. Before I closed the notebook, I wrote one more thing, a whisper to anyone out there watching. If you've ever had your heart shattered by people you trusted and you're still standing, maybe not loudly, maybe not perfectly, but still standing, then you're stronger than they'll ever understand. If this story speaks to something inside you, drop a comment and tell me what part of your story you've taken back. The final hearing was set for a Monday morning in late September. I arrived early, dressed simply but confidently in a navy dress that had once belonged to my mother. A quiet piece of armor. Cole arrived 10 minutes late, his tie slightly crooked, the usual arrogance on his face, replaced by a strange kind of stiffness. He looked like a man who thought the world owed him a second chance, and was shocked it didn't. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a zero-tolerance posture, opened the session swiftly. "Let's keep this civil. We are here to finalize terms." Margot rose first. "Your Honor, we have provided all documentation as required. My client is requesting the following: full ownership of the marital home, a 50% share in Cole's business valuation per California law, and a formal no-contact order involving Danielle Harper for a minimum of 18 months. The judge's eyebrows lifted. "That's specific." Margot nodded. "It's necessary." Cole's lawyer stood trying to push a counteroffer: less equity, no restrictions on contact. But Cole was already unraveling. He couldn't stay silent. "This is about revenge, not fairness. She's punishing me." The judge turned to me. "Ms. Lawson, do you have anything to say?" I stood. I didn't shake. "Your Honor," I began, voice low but steady. "For 7 years, I built a life beside this man. I managed our home, supported his career, and forgave more than I should have. But betrayal by your partner is one thing. Betrayal by your own sister, that kind of pain writes itself into your bones." I paused, letting that truth sink in. But this isn't about revenge. This is about dignity, about closure, and about refusing to be collateral damage in someone else's recklessness. The judge studied me, then turned to Cole. "You had ample opportunity to resolve this with integrity. Instead, you lied, repeatedly. Ms. Lawson, you'll retain the home and receive 50% of the business as requested. The contact order stands." She banged the gavel. It was over. Cole didn't speak. He just stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Maybe he was. Outside the courthouse, Margot hugged me and said, "Let this be the last day they get space in your head." That night, I walked through the empty halls of the house I now fully owned, and in the silence I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I opened the guest room door, the one Danielle had once joked she'd turn into her studio when she visited. I emptied the last of her things into a box, sealed it, and left it on the porch with a single note. "No forwarding address. Don't come back." I didn't need to burn bridges. I was building something better without them. By the end of the week, I had legally changed my last name back to Rachel Monroe. I donated the couch they used to sit on together, painted the walls a soft green, and adopted a rescue dog named Lou. Lou didn't ask questions. He just curled up beside me like he'd been waiting for a home his whole life. And maybe so had I. If you've ever had to walk away from people who once were your everything, who made your world feel small when it should have felt sacred, then you know the kind of courage it takes to choose peace over patterns. If this story is touching something buried inside you, if you've felt silenced before, I'd love to hear from you. Share your story in the comments or just say, "I chose me." Because sometimes that's where the real story begins. The days after the final ruling were oddly peaceful. The storm that had raged for months finally began to settle, leaving behind a quiet that felt both foreign and necessary. The house, my house now, was a sanctuary again, filled with light pouring through the windows and the soft hum of the city beyond. But healing isn't linear. Every morning I caught myself expecting a message from Danielle or Cole, an apology, a plea, anything. None came. Their silence spoke volumes louder than any words could. Instead, the messages came from strangers. Women reaching out through social media, through emails, through mutual contacts, sharing stories that echoed mine: betrayal, loss, the suffocating feeling of being erased. I began volunteering at a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting women navigating high-conflict divorces and family betrayals. My background in design became a tool not just for work, but for advocacy. I helped build websites, design campaigns, and create spaces where women could share their stories without fear. One afternoon during a conference, a woman approached me. "I watched that documentary you consulted on," she said softly. "Your story gave me hope. I'm going through something similar, and for the first time, I don't feel so alone." That was the moment I understood how far I'd come. I wasn't just surviving, I was becoming a beacon. But the journey wasn't without scars. My relationship with my mother remained cautious. She visited less frequently, the air between us, still heavy with unspoken regrets and tentative forgiveness. Sometimes she'd mention Cole or Danielle only to catch herself and change the subject. "It's a process," she'd say. "We all have our roles." And I thought about roles, how long I'd played mine as the dutiful daughter, the supportive wife, the forgiving sister. Now I was writing my own script. Months later, news broke that Cole's law license had been suspended pending an ethics investigation related to mishandling client funds and conflict of interest allegations. The very scrutiny I'd helped ignite had extended beyond our personal battle. Danielle's career in PR had quietly unraveled. Word spread that her reputation was tarnished beyond repair, leaving her to find work in a small firm far from the city's limelight. The phone rang one evening as I was closing my laptop. It was Margot. "Have you seen the news?" I flipped on the television just in time to catch a segment highlighting professional misconduct within top law firms. Cole's face flashed on the screen. "Justice," I whispered. The media attention had terrified him, but it had become my unexpected ally. That year, I began dating again. Not casually, but with intention. Franklin, a high school teacher with a gentle spirit, admired my resilience and the way I owned my story. We built our relationship slowly, grounded in honesty and mutual respect, far from the assumptions that had once suffocated me. There were nights when I still thought about that afternoon, the moment I walked into the office and found my life undone. But I no longer saw that Rachel as broken. She was fierce. She was wise. She was dangerous to anyone who mistook kindness for weakness. And as I sat in my sunlit living room, surrounded by the life I was rebuilding, I realized something fundamental. My story wasn't about what was taken from me. It was about what I chose to take back. If you've ever felt powerless in the face of betrayal, if you've ever doubted your strength, know this. You are not powerless. You simply haven't yet found your power. And when you do, everything changes. I'd love to hear from you. Share your journey, your strength, or simply say, "I'm still standing." Together, we rewrite the endings we deserve. If this story moved you, please leave a comment, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Let's keep these conversations alive because no one should ever have to fight alone. The weeks that followed were filled with a strange combination of relief and renewed purpose. I finally had my home back, my name restored, and the legal battles behind me, or so I thought. But the aftermath of betrayal stretches far beyond court rulings and property settlements. It reaches into the quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts and forced to confront not just what was taken from you, but who you've become because of it. There were mornings when I'd wake up with a lingering ache in my chest, memories flashing unbidden, those stolen years of trust, the private smiles exchanged behind my back, the stolen dreams I had nurtured alongside Cole. The betrayal wasn't just a moment. It was a slow, painful unraveling of everything I had built. But I learned to be patient with myself. Healing isn't about erasing pain, it's about learning to carry it differently. In the process, I found myself reaching out to others. Women who had suffered similar wounds, who'd been cast aside or silenced. We shared our stories, sometimes raw, sometimes wrapped in cautious hope. And in those connections, I found strength. Their courage fueled my own, and their resilience reminded me that survival isn't just personal, it's communal. One of the most unexpected gifts from this journey was the chance to speak publicly about my experience. Through a series of interviews and workshops, I shared not only the betrayal, but the process of reclaiming my narrative. It wasn't easy speaking so openly about something so personal, but it was necessary. Because if my story could help even one woman find her voice, then the pain had meaning. Franklin was there through it all, quietly steady. His presence reminded me daily that trust could be rebuilt, that love, when rooted in respect and honesty, could bloom again. We moved slowly, deliberately, creating a foundation strong enough to support new dreams. Meanwhile, the media attention around Cole's professional misconduct continued. Stories surfaced about mishandled cases and questionable ethics, confirming what many had suspected, but lacked evidence to prove. Danielle's career, once bright and promising, dimmed under the weight of rumors and lost clients. As the dust settled, my relationship with my mother began to shift. Our conversations became less guarded, more genuine. She admitted haltingly that she had misjudged the situation, that she had underestimated my strength. I didn't need apologies, I just needed her to see me as I was a woman who had fought fiercely for her dignity and refused to be erased. On quiet evenings, I sometimes reflect on that afternoon when I first walked into Cole's office and saw Danielle sitting on his lap. It was the moment my life broke apart, and the moment I began to put myself back together. I am no longer the woman who shrank to avoid conflict. I am someone forged in fire, harder, wiser, and ready to face whatever comes next. If you are reading this and you feel trapped by betrayal, by silence, or by fear, remember this. Your story is not over, your power is waiting, and your voice matters. Share your thoughts below and join our community of women who choose to rise not in spite of what happened, but because of it. If this story has resonated with you, please subscribe, comment, and share. Together, we are stronger. It wasn't long before my story caught the attention of a local documentary producer. She reached out with a proposal to tell the stories of women like me, women who had faced betrayal, fought back, and reclaimed their lives. At first I hesitated. The thought of exposing my pain, my private life to the world felt daunting. But then I thought about all the women who had written to me sharing their struggles, their silences, their fears. And I knew that by sharing my story, I could help others find their voice. The documentary team arrived at my small apartment in the Arts District. Exposed brick walls, sunlight flooding the space, an environment that reflected the transformation I was living. Filming wasn't easy, recounting the moments of shock, heartbreak, and rage reopened wounds. But each retelling was a step toward healing, a way to take control of the narrative that had once been stolen from me. The episode aired to a response I hadn't anticipated. Messages poured in from women, men, therapists, advocates, all touched by the honesty and rawness of the story. It became one of the highest-rated episodes in the series. In the months that followed, my design business flourished. Referrals came from women who saw the documentary seeking someone who understood the power of owning their story. Franklin and I continued to build our relationship slow and steady. He admired my resilience and the grace with which I carried my scars. Together, we created a life rooted in trust, respect, and shared dreams. Meanwhile, Cole relocated to a small firm in a different state. His ambitions in law curtailed by the consequences of his actions. Danielle's attempts to rebuild her PR career were met with cold shoulders and closed doors. Reputation, once so carefully cultivated, had crumbled. My mother and I continued to mend our relationship. She came to dinners, we talked about books, politics, and the work I was doing to help other women. The past was rarely mentioned, and when it was, I was the one who brought it up. I don't hate them, neither Cole, Danielle, nor even my mother. Hate is exhausting. I have better things to do with my energy. But I haven't forgiven them either. Forgiveness implies what they did was excusable, and I don't believe it is. You don't forgive someone for destroying your life just because they say they're sorry. Instead, I've done something more powerful. I've moved beyond them. Late at night, when the city is quiet and I'm working on a new project, I think back to that day, the day I walked into an office and found my life unraveling. I think about the woman I was then trusting, accommodating, willing to make herself smaller to avoid conflict. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone harder, wiser, and infinitely more dangerous to those who mistake kindness for weakness. My story has become a symbol not of victimhood but of refusal. Refusal to accept that being wronged is the end of the story. And sometimes when the phone rings with a woman asking, "I feel so powerless. What do I do?" I tell her the truth. You're not powerless. You just haven't found your power yet. And once you do, everything changes. If this story has moved you, or if you've faced betrayal and found strength, I invite you to subscribe, share your story below, and join a community of people reclaiming their power. Your voice matters, your story matters, and together we rise. Months passed and life slowly took on a new rhythm, one that wasn't dictated by the betrayal or the legal battles, but by a conscious choice to move forward. I filled my days with work activism and moments of quiet reflection. The house, once a symbol of loss, had become a sanctuary of resilience. I found myself drawn deeper into the community of women I'd met through the nonprofit. Their stories were different, but shared the same thread: the fight to reclaim dignity, to rewrite their narratives, and to refuse to be silenced. One afternoon, while working on a campaign for women facing financial abuse during divorce, I received an unexpected call from my mother. There was hesitation in her voice, but also a newfound softness. "I've been thinking," she said slowly, "about everything, about you." I listened, knowing that forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a journey. She told me she admired the strength I'd shown even when she hadn't understood. She wanted to be part of my life again on my terms. It wasn't a clean slate, there were scars on both sides, but it was a beginning. Franklin continued to be my rock. We planned a trip to Vermont, a place where the mountains meet the sky, a place untouched by the chaos that had once consumed my life. We talked about the future, hopeful, open, and real. One evening, as we sat by the fire, he said, "You've turned your pain into power. That's rare." I smiled, feeling the truth of his words settle in. Turning pain into power wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about harnessing that pain to fuel a better version of myself. The experience taught me to value honesty, respect, and boundaries, not just in relationships, but within myself. I started journaling again, capturing moments of growth and gratitude. I wrote about learning to love myself first, to set limits with kindness, but firmness, and to trust in my worth. I also began speaking at local events, sharing my journey not as a tale of victimhood, but as a testament to resilience. The feedback was humbling. Women came up to me after talks, tears in their eyes, thanking me for giving them courage. I realized that my story had become more than just my own. It was a beacon for others navigating darkness. On quieter nights, I think about the choices I made. Choosing to fight, choosing to rise, choosing to live on my own terms. That afternoon in Cole's office remains a pivotal moment, but it no longer defines me. I am more than betrayal. I am more than loss. I am strength. I am clarity. I am freedom. If you've found yourself at a crossroads, unsure of how to move forward after betrayal or hardship, remember the power to rewrite your story is in your hands. You don't have to carry the weight of others' choices. Share your thoughts below. What does strength mean to you? How have you reclaimed your power? If this story inspires you, please consider subscribing and joining a community of voices rising together. By the time the dust settled, I had learned something essential. Betrayal changes you, but it doesn't have to define you. The final chapter of my legal battle was more than just a courtroom victory. It was a reclamation of my dignity. Cole had agreed to the full settlement. Margot negotiated a sum that allowed me to buy a small apartment downtown, a fresh start, untainted by past shadows. Danielle's attempts to rebuild her career in PR faded as whispers of scandal followed her relentlessly. But what I gained went beyond money or property. I found my voice. The night I signed the final papers, I sat alone in the apartment that was finally mine. The quiet was comforting. The weight of years of betrayal slowly lifted as I realized that the person I had become was not broken, but battle-tested. A message popped up on my phone from an old friend I saw the documentary. "Proud of you." I smiled and typed back, "Still fighting, still standing." The path to healing isn't linear. There are days when the wounds feel fresh, when the betrayal seeps into the corners of my mind, but those moments don't control me. I control them. I began speaking publicly, advocating for women who'd been silenced or erased. I worked with nonprofits to create support networks and resources for those facing the kind of heartbreak and legal complexities I'd endured. Franklin was by my side every step of the way. Our relationship blossomed not in spite of the past, but because of the honesty and resilience it inspired in both of us. We built something real, rooted in respect and truth. Sometimes late at night I reflect on the woman I was before that day, the one who walked into Cole's office, unaware, trusting, hopeful. She's not gone. She's evolved. She's harder, wiser, and infinitely more dangerous to those who mistake kindness for weakness. And I've come to understand that forgiveness isn't about excusing the wrongs done to you. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of anger and pain so you can move forward. I don't hate Cole or Danielle. I don't even hate the version of myself that allowed it all to happen. Because hate is exhausting, and life is too short to waste on bitterness. Instead, I choose freedom. I choose power. I choose to live on my terms. If you're watching this and you've faced betrayal, whether by family, friends, or lovers, know this. You are not alone. Your story isn't over. And you have the strength to write your own ending. If this story resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe, share your experience in the comments, and join a community that refuses to be silenced. Together we rise. Thank you for following my journey. Remember, clarity is the first step to courage. Once you see clearly, everything becomes possible. If you want the final closing message and wrap up, just say TIEP, and I'll prepare the 300-word gentle conclusion. Looking back on everything I've been through, I realize how much strength it takes to reclaim your life after betrayal. It's not about forgetting the pain or pretending it never happened. It's about choosing to stand up to fight for your dignity and to believe in your worth when others try to tell you otherwise. This journey has taught me that our stories do not end at the moments when we are hurt the most. Instead, those moments can mark the beginning of something new, of growth, resilience, and power. We all have the ability to write new chapters in our lives, to define ourselves by how we rise after falling. If there's one message I want to leave you with, it's this: your voice matters. Your story matters. No one else gets to decide what your life means or what you deserve. You have the right to claim your truth, to heal on your own terms, and to build a future filled with hope and freedom. Thank you for listening, for sharing this space with me. If my story has inspired you even a little, I hope you'll join our community where we support each other, speak openly, and refuse to be silenced. Together, we can turn pain into power. Remember, courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. If you believe in the power of your own story, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share your journey. Let's keep writing these stories of strength, one voice at a time. If you want me to help you with anything else, just ask.